If I were going to test a car, there is no such thing as winterization. So if I were going to test a car, my winter readiness, that's what I might refer to it as, I would check the number one thing that we get all the time, tire pressure. I'd make sure they're not sitting right at the threshold of like 2 pounds over what they need, because as the temperature decreases, the pressure will drop enough to where your tire light will be kicking on. So I'd make sure your tire pressure is ready for the winter, because it will decrease by 3 to 4 pounds as the weather gets cooler. I'd check the coolant in the engine to make sure that it is still, where did I put my thing? To make sure that it's still ready to withstand the freezing temperatures. I check the battery, because the cold is very hard on batteries. As it gets cold, you can see batteries start to fail. And then I would check tires. So at this point, I would pull out a tread depth gauge and I would check the tires all the way across. You're gonna want good siping and good tires going into winter, because the stopping distance for tires that are good is way better than balding tires. And the same it is for tire siping when it's wet. You want great tires going into winter. So if I was going to check a vehicle, I would do those 4 things and make sure they're each ready for winter. Vehicles don't actually need a winterization. So you want to get a little tester like this. This is a pretty inexpensive one, probably 20 bucks on Amazon. So what you're doing is you're hooking it up, and actually I see one concern when I go to hook it up. See this corrosion on the battery? That's going to be an issue there. There's corrosion inhibitor. You can buy that at your local parts store. You can scrub that off with a wire brush, throw some corrosion inhibitor on it, which helps. I see that right as I hook up the terminals. But what you're going to want to do is pull this up, and most of them will have a battery test option where you'll put in your cranking amps. The cranking amps on this battery is 740. All right, so then it gives us a health report for the battery. It says we got 534 cold cranking amps of the 740. It's sitting currently at 12.3 volts. So 12 volts is good. So we would call this battery good. This car's been sitting here. So the cranking amps might be a little low. If it was any lower than that, then we would probably want to change this before winter. Okay, that's one. You don't want to walk out to a cold car in the winter and not be able to start it. Okay, and then your coolant reservoir. What you'll do is you'll take one of these simple testers, probably down at your local parts store is probably $5. And you'll draw the coolant out of the system. It's got a little level mark right here on top. You get it right to that level. The larger needle will float based on the density of the fluid. It will float up to an indicator of, right here says that this coolant would be good up to a freezing point of -35 degrees Fahrenheit. So this coolant is plenty ready for the winter here in New Mexico. If the coolant wasn't see-through, if it was milky or any of those issues, you would change it right away and then you would retest it. This tests, you see the coolant will see through. The test says it's good. That coolant's ready for the winter. When you start checking your pressures, going into winter, you want to make sure you're a couple pounds, 2 to 3 pounds above what the door placard says. What I mean by door placard is inside every car, there's a door placard that tells you what your front and rear tire pressure should be. So this car is 32 PSI front, 32 PSI rear. So I would tend to go 2 pounds over that. So it's ready for fluctuation. So check your tire pressure. This one's right at 32. So you might end up putting that to 34 or so. If it's at 32 and it goes down by 3 or 4 pounds, it might kick on your TPMS light, which isn't going to kill you. So you might fill it to 34 pounds because if it's at 32 and it drops by 3 or 4 pounds, it may kick on your TPMS light, which isn't going to kill you, but it's annoying because then you got to go get your air checked all the time in the winter. So Save yourself a stop to get air them up a little bit before winter hits. Always make sure you have good tread depth going into winter so that you have good winter driving. One on turning and the other on stopping. You want to be able to do both properly. Winterize a car, that's a hoax. That's what you do to a boat maybe because it has lake water in it. A car, it's ready for winter. There might be a few things you might want to do before winter to make sure you're prepared. Then that's the simple stuff we've gone through. Check your battery, check your coolant, make sure your tire tread depth is good and your tire pressure. You're going to be ready for winter. Winterization's a hoax. There is no winterization for a modern car. Okay, not a complete hoax for all of you that live up north. I know you like to put on your winter tires and studs. We're in a 4-season place, so that's not really something we do in New Mexico. So before you blow up the comment section that everybody's got to put on their winter tires, we don't do that here.